So, folks, I want to tell you about this cool show that I co-host now. It's called the Transatlantic Call-In Show. It's a show for people to call in and ask trans people the burning questions they've always wanted to know, or to ask for advice, or to ask, controversial questions, or to debate. There's a whole lot of different ranges of calls that we take on the show. This call in particular is from an episode that I co-hosted with Luxander. Its content is phenomenal. Go check them out. Wonderful, wonderful content creator. But also, we got some wonderful calls. And the Transatlantic Call-In Show is, of course, a show hosted by The Line. If you haven't heard of them yet, there's a link down below where you can go click on it and check out all of their other shows. They have many, many other shows. And also, you can subscribe, and you can find a link down below to the original episode that aired. So you can go, watch all of the calls at once if you would like. You can leave a comment over there. You can like it. You could also comment here. You can do all the things. You can do anything you put your mind to, okay? Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. So you can like this show and that show, and you can hit the subscribe button here and there. Don't let anyone put you in a box, all right? I believe in you. Never forget, I believe in you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this call. I really enjoy all of the calls that we get on this show. And I'm going to tell you to like and comment and subscribe again after the call's over. I just have this feeling. It's like I can predict the future or something. It's pretty cool. Anyway, go check out the things down below. There's a merch store too. I bet you didn't know that. Now you do. Go check that out. And a Patreon. Oh, the new information just keeps coming, doesn't it? It just keeps coming. So anyway, go check out this call and check out The Line and the Transatlantic Call-In Show, or TACUS. It's every Thursday. I think I mentioned all the things. It's every Thursday. You can call in every Thursday if you want. If you just keep coming up with new questions. So anyway, let's get to the call.
All right, we are going to bring in Grant, they, them pronouns from Texas, who has questions about the distinction between sex and gender. Grant, you are live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Pretty good so far. Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Lay it on us. What's your question today?
All right, so you hold that sex and gender are two different categories, right?
Yeah.
That is the academic understanding, yeah.
Okay, so basically, if sex and gender are two different categories, when somebody says they're a transgender woman or a transgender man, is that a claim about their gender or is that a claim about their sex?
I think usually their gender, right? Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, usually gender, since there's the gender part of transgender attached there.
Okay, but like the trans part is short for transition, right?
No,
that transgender is one word.
So trans is short for transgender, it means like having a gender identity that's different to the one that you were assigned at birth, or that's different to what you're expected to have based on your biological sex. So that's a common misconception, though, that trans is short for transition. It's just short for transgender.
Okay, then. So if somebody was born like as a biological male, let's say, and their gender identity is of a woman, it would be a transgender woman.
Well,
yeah.
So yes, in general, but I'm going to add a massive caveat there, which is that doctors, when a baby is born, aren't running like tests on chromosomes or tests on like genetics, generally speaking. Usually how it works is baby come out, they look at the genitals and make their best guess. And that's what they assign. So typically then we have like the phrase, gender assigned at birth, because it's basically a doctor taking their best guess based on genitals and the statistical likelihood that your gender identity is going to align with, the genital situation you got going on.
Oh, I was under the impression that they assigned sex at birth, not a gender. I was okay. That's interesting. But I do have another question then that follows. So, if
Well, like I mean
women are two
the
different
just
categories,
to clarify there, like they're assigning what they think your sex is, which is kind of like gender. They're handing you your gender card. But they aren't doing like a full battery of any kind of like establishing what your sex is other than looking at genitals.
It's kind of a
And
two-part thing. Like I would
yeah.
say the doctor assigns your
well,
sex and then your parents assign you your gender, usually based on your sex. Like your parents say, "It's a girl. We're going to name her Rosie," and all this kind of stuff. So like they both are inflicted at the same time in different ways.
okay, well, let's say it was funny, but like hypothetically, if somebody was born in the wrong body, and I'm not being facetious there, like if their gender identity is innately of a woman, and it's always been that way, and everybody has always treated them that way, and the doctor even said that their gender was of a woman, but their biological sex would be that of a male because they have male characteristics and male chromosomes and such, but they always identify as a woman, and there was never any time that they weren't a woman. Would they still be a gender woman?
Okay, so typically the situation you described is not going to occur, but let me kind of put it in a way that might actually occur. If I had a baby right now and it had a penis, I would probably not make a point to raise that child as a boy. So if I was like, yeah, I'm just going to use they, them pronouns, I'm just going to give them a gender neutral sounding name like Taylor, or something, then the idea is like my child never had an assigned gender. So maybe if they tell me when they're 5 years old or 3 years old, which is basically the developmental age where children can understand their gender, if they tell me at age 3 that they're a girl, and then I'm like, cool, thank you for telling me that. I will now raise you as a girl. Cool. What girl things do you want to try doing? Whatever. Then like we would still use the term trans because there is still like a societal expectation that a child born with a penis like should quote unquote should be a boy. But I'm totally here for your hypothetical future situation in which none of these concepts exist anymore. Like maybe in the Star Trek future, there is no such thing as assigning gender. You get our best guess of your sex designation, and that has nothing to do with your personality, and we don't need to apply a term to it at all. I'm on board for it. It's just like in a practical sense, not the situation that we're dealing with now. Like the child is still going to need cross-sex hormones if they or puberty blockers if they want to go through a physical transition because their natal body is likely still going to go down a testosterone pathway. So like it's still useful, the terminology. Transsexual is an outdated term that some people will still use to be like, I mean, sometimes I'll say I'm a non-binary transsexual because I want to call attention to the fact that non-binary people go through biological transition. But yeah, so it's just like, when are these terms going to stop being useful? I don't know. That's a great question.
Okay, but you would say in that hypothetical, they might not be considered a trans woman.
No, yeah, they would still. So the thing is, it's like if your gender is different to what you're expected to have based on your biological sex. Like if your gender and your biological sex are not in alignment, that's what transition means. Or sorry, that's what transgender means.
Well, hold
Flubbed
on.
my words.
The expectation part is a little bit confusing because what if the societal norms were inverted and if you were born biologically male, but your expectation was to be a female, but then to be a woman, but then your gender identity was that of a man, would you then be a trans man in the other way?
I imagine that society would have fundamentally different language to describe the phenomenon of gender.
But also
Let's say hypothetically they have our language.
gender is really flexible. Like kind of the concept of what was masculine and what was feminine in societies before ours varies greatly. Like stiletto high heels were invented for men, specifically to ride to
Wait,
war
wait,
in. Like
Yeah. for horses and stuff.
Yeah, and then they became a woman thing. Pants were originally only a man thing, and now they're a man and woman thing. Like gender and gender expectations are moving all the time everywhere, and what gender expectations might be in New York City vary from what gender expectations might be in, the Deep South. Like there are a lot of different ways that gender is wibbly wobbly. And so, yeah, it's a nebulous, societally constructed concept.
Okay, so if somebody is a transgender woman, so they were born biologically with male characteristics, but they identify as a woman. If they then change their mind or they have some sort of revelation, and now they identify as a man in the gender category, are they now a transgender man?
Oh, they would just be a cisgender man.
Okay. Another thing, you use the words masculine and feminine to describe the gender roles. Aren't those biological terms?
No, like different activities are coded as masculine or feminine in different societal makeups. So, like, what is considered typically a male behavior or man behavior, rather, or what is typical woman behavior, again, that's not related to biology in any sense, really. It's just how
Well,
different societies have coded different sets of ideas and qualities, characteristics, etc. It's pretty arbitrary.
well, there is such a thing as a masculine biological characteristic, right? You can use the terms
I mean,
masculine and feminine
I
in
would
a
say it's
biological sense. You're
a
discussing
male
anatomy.
characteristic, yeah.
I think that people do
I
use
think
these
so.
terms, like the application of the terms. I'm sure that there are lots of people who would say like a chiseled jaw on a man is a masculine feature. That yeah, this is like the way that our language is
But do
structured
you think
around
they'd be
this.
wrong?
So I'm just saying that the language around this can lack specificity. So the more specific we can be, or the more caveats or context we can provide to something, makes it more useful. I don't take issue personally with the idea that like, a very muscular man is masculine, in a physical sense, even though like, I mean, the acquisition of muscles is a gendered behavior in some contexts. Like men wanting to be big and muscular has to do with their gender. So it's one of those things where like biology and gender identity they're definitely related. Like I'm like nobody here is going to say that there is like no relationship between those things. Like that's part of what defines trans people as trans is that like most people have a very close relationship between their biological sex and their gender identity, but some people deviate from that. So it's like, yeah, and your gender identity is informed by where you came from as a trans person. It's like, the definition of trans woman, as we've established, is like, yeah, my biology says that I'm supposed to be male, but I identify more with womanhood and I want to have female characteristics. And so I transition for that. But like, none of us are unaware of our biological features. And so it's like, it can be kind of hard to narrow down the specificity of language because our like language itself is not structured very cleanly around this like I don't want to say like new, like relatively new distinction that we're creating in an academic sense. Like we're formalizing things right now that like we haven't gotten a concrete endpoint, and we might never. Like the language is probably going to continue to shift over time. The way that we talk about this now is probably going to be considered wildly outdated and out of touch in 30 years. Like I don't know.
Okay, I guess my main problem with that is if you really do hold that sex and gender are distinct categories, then you said like if my biology says I'm male but I identify as a woman. Well, if they're two distinct categories, then your biology shouldn't say you identify as anything. They're different categories.
Well, we're talking about a gender identity, right?
Yeah, I know.
We're
If
not we're
your
not talking about
biological
a
sex is
sex identity.
considered male or female, and that shouldn't
As I
say
said,
anything about what your gender
they are
identity is.
they are typically associated very closely. like in 97% of the population, gender identity is in alignment with biological sex. Now, there is also a whole fucking can of worms that we could get into about whether the brain is one of the organs of sex, and that us having a brain thing that makes us feel like we have a gender identity that's different to the rest of our biology. Like, there are very interesting types of research looking into like the estrogen pathways in the brains of trans women, and like lots of different other things like that. There's nothing conclusive at this time. And I honestly am not really interested in finding like the trans part of the brain, because then come lobotomies. But so there's clearly a relationship. And so I'm not trying to say that they are like completely separate. I guess like they inform each other. They are distinct, but they inform each other. Or as Arden put in the chat, like they're not orthogonal. It's not like they're, completely disconnected. It's just that first, for the purposes of describing like practically, there are two different things going on here, where clearly there's like a biological component. Like, can you produce sperm or do you produce ovum? Like, are you growing the beard naturally, or do you need a testosterone supplement to help you? And there's plenty of men out there who can't grow a beard and like they want help with it, even though they're not trans. So yeah, I'm just like, this is a continuing developmental field. Right. Yeah, go ahead, Grant. What are you saying?
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting, because that's kind of in my analysis of the whole looks maxing movement. If you've ever seen that, it's like we've had this for a couple of decades now of people who are born as a certain sex who want to be the opposite gender and perceived that way. But now you've got a whole phenomenon of people who are born biologically in alignment with their gender categories, but they want to be perceived as more exaggerated in that feature. Like, you want to see looks want to be more masculine when they're already male, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a little goofy.
I think a lot of the looks maxing stuff is born out of like a deep desire to appeal to other, in particular, I've basically only ever seen this in reference to men trying to impress other men. And I think
true.
I think kind of like how in the 1980s He-Man was like set up as like this peak of masculinity, and like He-Man wasn't all muscled for girls watching He-Man. He-Man was muscled for the boys watching He-Man, to present like this is what peak masculinity means. And I think we're just seeing a very different, very online version of that unfolding right now for young men in particular.
That's interesting, but I guess one of the biggest issues I'm having right now is when you say that somebody born biologically male is typically associated with the gender category of man, or is expected to be, or society has that expectation that they're going to be. If you're placing the weight on the transgender part of that, your categorization on the expectation or the typical association, you'd have to admit that if that wasn't expected, like if somebody who's male is not expected to be a man, or they're typically not associated, then you wouldn't use the term transgender, right?
Yeah, if the context was completely different, the language would be completely different. I agree with you. It's just that I'm describing the situation as it is. Sorry, Jack, what were you going to say?
Oh, yeah, language is born out of utility. So, yes. If we had a situation where it no longer served utility to have that language, we wouldn't be using that language.
Yeah, like, and this is a great example that I think of sometimes. The word atheist, we shouldn't need that word. The only reason we need that word is because religion is so dominant in our societies. Like, I don't know if you know this, Grant, but like the line is a secular, humanist, atheist-oriented network. So even though we're focusing on trans issues here, we are focusing on it from the skeptic atheist perspective. And so like, yeah, in a hypothetical future where religion isn't everywhere, maybe we will not need the word atheist because everybody doesn't believe in God, right? But we currently exist in a world where it's a useful distinction to make when we're communicating about like personal identity and beliefs. So like, yeah, I agree with you that the word, whoa, that was loud. The word trans wouldn't need to exist in the hypothetical Star Trek future where we don't assign gender. Or like, yeah, maybe the word would still exist, but it would only describe people who require like medical treatment or something. Or maybe there will be a brand new word that describes those people seeking that medical treatment. and like the gender part isn't even really a factor. Or maybe the human species will evolve beyond the need for what is it, anisogamy, the like two gamete sexual reproduction thing. Like, I don't know. I'm on board. I'm like excited to see what that future is going to be like.
Okay. Yeah. I guess another question would be that if biological sex and gender are distinct, and nobody's ever claiming to make a transition among their sex. Nobody's claiming that they're actually changing their chromosomes from fundamentally different biological and anatomical level. Is there actually any logical problem with just referring to people as male or female?
Yeah, there is. Like one because trans people do change their biological sex either surgically or with hormones, and that fundamentally does change your biological sex. Or it shifts where your body or your secondary sex characteristics might appear on like some kind of spectrum, if you will. But for example, there's a lot of problems with referring to people just based on sex because you don't know what other people's sex is. When you see like a woman walking down the street, you don't know that that's a woman because you like saw their genitals. You don't know what their sex is because you didn't test their chromosomes. You aren't really engaging with anything other than their gendered appearance, right? And your preconceived notions that you've learned from society that are markers of like, oh, man, woman, they, them, etc. Like in practical terms, doctors are really the only people who are going to ever be engaging with your sex or maybe some sexual partners. Um, but for practical everyday purposes, like we can't allow for just other individuals to violate our bodily autonomy and privacy just so that they know what pronouns to use for us.
Okay, I guess two issues with that. Uh, First is I don't think you can actually fundamentally change the anatomical structure of a male or a female. I think that is something so fundamental. You can't actually
Wait.
change it because it has to do with the
So
development. Every single
if
characteristic that you have is developed in a specific way in accordance with your biological sex because of your hormones and because of your DNA. Your DNA is the information that informs your body's development, and that is specific to gender. Or
can
sorry,
I
sex.
can I ask if you think like if somebody who gets a kidney transplant, is that not changing their biology?
That would be altering it, but not fundamentally.
Yeah, but it's a different DNA from a different person being put into your body. Does that not alter like your body's overall DNA structure, its overall makeup on a pretty fundamental level?
No, it would alter it holistically. You could no longer say that it was identical to what you were before, but it isn't
Yeah, because you have
fundamentally changed.
different DNA in
Because
you,
by
right?
doing a kidney transplant, your foot is still the same as your foot was before the transition. If
Yeah,
what you have as a female is a female foot, and then you
that's
like have a
no,
surgery and you remove
that's
your
weird.
vagina, you still
Grant,
have
that's
the female
weird.
foot.
That's weird. That's a weird thing to say that you have a female foot. That's a weird thing to say because here's the thing is that all of your
Is it?
cells, hold on, all of your cells possess the ability, well, unless you have like androgen insensitivity syndrome or something similar to that. But for the average person, all of your body's cells are responsive to the sex hormones. So, like, for example, you said, you said female feet. Well, did you know that trans women's feet sometimes shrink when they've been on estrogen for a number of years? Did you know that the way that a trans woman smells changes the longer she's been on hormones? Like even if she hasn't had bottom surgery, her genitals will start to smell more like a vulva than they smell like a penis. Like you grow your own boobs with hormones because your cells are programmed to receive the instructions. So even if it is an exogenous hormone, as in one that you administer medically rather than one that your body creates on its own, your entire body is capable of responding to those hormones and changes on a fundamental level. So your chromosomes don't change, but literally all of your cellular information gets updated.
You don't think there's such a thing as a female foot?
I mean, if you want to say that there is such thing as like estrogen makes a female foot, like I kind of contradicted myself a little bit. If a trans woman's feet shrink when she's on estrogen, then I agree with you that there may be such a thing as a female foot, but there is not such a thing as an immutable female foot.
Well, when we're talking about the whole of the body, if you replace every single part of the body, if the body is made up of a whole of particulars, if you replace every single part with a sexual counterpart of male to female or whatever, you would no longer have that body. The body's identity would not be the same. It's not, you cannot possibly transition holistically from male to female.
Yeah, actually, I
Grant,
just said that you do.
Also, Grant, do you know, do you, when you're using the word holistically a lot, did you know every cell in your body is replaced over the course of a 10-year cycle?
I didn't know that. I think accepting your neurons in your brain.
With some minor exceptions, but even your bones on a 10-year time scale get replaced. So we're kind of veering into like a ship of we're kind of getting into a ship of Theseus situation where you're like, the ship of Theseus has to be a man. And we're telling you, well, the ship of Theseus can, if you make some alterations to the different parts that you're putting into the ship of Theseus, we could call the ship of Theseus a girl. Or a they, them, a non-binary ship of Theseus, right? Like, part of what makes our bodies build and grow and change is our hormone, the hormones we put into our bodies, right? Like, I for example, I think most men probably wouldn't be all that happy if suddenly they started taking estrogen. Like, you started slipping a man estrogen, I think they'd be pretty upset because it would change their body in a pretty deep and profound way, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so like, clearly there is a way in which our bodies are malleable over time. Like, our cells completely shift over time. Hormones play a huge role in those shifts. And like, clearly there is some malleability here.
Yeah, but you can't violate the law of identity. Like you said, it takes like 10 years, but the cells within my bone are going to renew or change over time. Yeah, but my bone, like the bone in my wrist, is the same bone in my wrist that I had when I was 5. It's the same bone.
That's the ship of Theseus argument. No, that's called ship of Theseus. Do you not? Sorry, we keep referencing it. Grant, do you know what the ship of Theseus is? Are you familiar with that story?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. So the idea is, if you want to go for it, you can. Yeah, please.
Yeah, basically, the ship of Theseus is the thought experiment that Theseus has a ship, a famous sailing vessel, and as it gets used over time, the different planks of the ship of Theseus are replaced with new planks. And the thought being that eventually every single plank of the ship of Theseus is a different plank than what was originally called the ship of Theseus. And yet we keep calling it the ship of Theseus and keep saying it's the same ship. And at what point does it stop being the same ship?
Personally, I don't think it does. You can't violate the law of identity.
What is the law of identity?
That things retain its identity over time.
Cutty Sark? Do you know the Cutty Sark?
What's that?
Okay, so the Cutty Sark is a different ship. I think it's a real ship that actually existed, and it burned down in a fire. And then they rebuilt it, and they called it the Cutty Sark. Is that still the same ship?
Nope.
Okay, so you're understanding that, like, so it's interesting. It's interesting, right? It's a kind of cool philosophical topic. Like, if you're replacing each piece of something, or let's bring it down to something even more simple. Let's say I have a broom, And you know, nowadays the broom has like a part that screws onto the bottom, like the brush part screws onto the bottom. So let's say my broom handle breaks and I replace the broom handle, and then shortly thereafter, my dog eats the bottom part, and now I have to buy a new bottom part. Is it the same broom? Does it like maintain its identity, or is it a new thing now?
It was just the bottom part of the broom that was replaced.
Both parts were replaced. The handle broke, so I had to replace the handle. And then 6 months later, the bottom part got destroyed, and I had to replace the bottom part and screw it onto the new handle.
Yeah, I'd say that's the same broom.
Okay, so that's a fascinating philosophical position that you can take, and there is no right answer. I think. I mean, it's like the very interesting crossover that this has is if you think about the transporters from Star Trek and how they functionally kill you and then rebuild a new creature that looks like you and has all your memories. That we're Cuddy Sarking on the transporter. There's a great video by CGP Grey called "The Trouble with Transporters" if you want to watch it. But I can agree that we are ship of Theseusing our way through our lives. Like, we maintain a story. Wow, again, the really loud noise. That was crazy. We maintain
I'm at work right now.
maintain it's cool. We maintain a sense of continuity about our identities by the story and our memories of our experiences. But I am physically not at all the same person that I was when I was a child. Like, all of my body parts have been replaced.
Really?
So because all of my body parts have been replaced, and also because I have a completely different set of like values and experiences now that I didn't have when I was 7 years old. Like, I remember that person, and I remember I like have that person inside me still, but I am totally different emotionally and physically because I don't have any of the same body parts as I do. So if we circle this back around to like gender and the fact that all of your cells can respond to the hormones. Like, we have differences in our brains when we start hormones. We have differences in our skin texture. The size of our feet change. Some trans women get shorter, like they lose inches off of their total height after being on estrogen for a number of years. They develop, big juicy thighs, the way that women have big juicy thighs. Like all of your body. And if you do that for 10 years, on this idea that like all of your cells get replaced after a 10-year cycle or 7 to 10-year cycle, then like that person has fundamentally changed all of the cells in their body to be female ones.
You don't think that, okay, this is just a little bit weird for me. So me, as in Grant, my identity as me, the thing we're referencing when we say Grant, that retained since my conception, since my beginning of existence. That is the identity of me as an entity, as a thing. My identity as what I am retains over time. I don't ever become something that I am not.
Wait, so are you still a baby?
What do you say?
Like, are you still a baby?
If you're going to make the distinction between who I was and who I am, then I was never a baby. What I am now is distinct from anything in the past. You can't even say that you were a baby because you is distinct. So I can say, yeah, well, I'm not still a baby, but my identity has retained. You can have changes, but the identity does not change.
But we're not really talking about identity when you're asking questions about hormonal makeup. So I'd like to circle back around to that. Like, if when you were asking, like, you were saying like, okay, if you start out with a male foot, then you still have a male foot. Like, I disproved that by telling you that all of the cells in your body respond if you start taking estrogen, and that includes your feet shrinking. And after 10 years, you don't have all the same cells anymore. So, like, when we're talking about biological changes, and we are going to have to come to an end to this conversation soon. We have a shit ton of callers waiting. We are not going to have time to get to all of them. But can you understand at least the perspective that I'm sharing, that like your body does fundamentally change after a certain duration of exposure to hormones if you're transitioning?
I accept changes. I'm not denying changes. And I agree with you that there can be some sort of fundamental changes, but I just disagree that the identity completely fundamentally changed. It's that what you're referring to in the now is completely distinct. It's separated from the thing in the past. So, for instance, if you want to say
Grant,
I think that
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. The history
I'm agreeing with you.
The history of the identity, the history of your identity does matter. That's why it's called a trans woman. Because her history as someone who was assigned male at birth and who probably grew up as a boy that's an acknowledgement of the continuation of her identity from one state of being to another.
Would you say there was a transition?
But that's a great way to end this. Thank you so much, Grant. This has been a very stimulating conversation. I hope we answered some of your questions. And, if you want to call back sometime and shoot the shit some more, I'm happy to have you on.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
That was great.
That was fun. We got to throw out the ship of Theseus. You got to bring up the Cutty Sark. That's cool.
So excited. So I was like, that was my time. Somebody in the chat's like, why are we talking about the Cutty Sark? Listen, that's a great by the way, I wholeheartedly think that CGP Grey video is so good.
When I was a kid, I didn't think about transporters at all. Now, I would, if Star Trek Future happened today, I would never get in a transporter. Never.
I don't know if I would care that much. I don't I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. Well, let's not get hung up on it though, because let's talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to conceptualize the conversation though.
Well, folks, there you have it. You watched The Call, and you know what? I bet it was great. Or at the very least, I bet Luxander and I were great at handling that call. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button and maybe leave a comment. Comments longer than 8 words helping the algorithm better for whatever reason. And also, while you're leaving a comment, you got to scroll down past the description and you could check out a couple of links in there. There's a link for the line. There's a link to the specific episode that this call was from. There's a link to the line's Patreon. There's a link to the line's merch store. There's a whole lot of links down there. Go click on them. Foster your exploratory spirit and go forth and explore. Or whatever. I'm not your mom. But if I was your mom, she'd be telling you, go leave a comment down and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. That's what moms do, of course, every night when they tuck their children into bed. Anyway, let's keep on going, folks.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, Bane, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.